In 525 BC, the Persian king Cambyses II sent 50,000 soldiers across the Sahara to destroy a desert oracle that had refused to recognize him as Egypt's rightful ruler. The entire army vanished, no bodies, no weapons, no bones, and was never found. The disappearance of the army of Cambyses is one of the oldest unsolved military mysteries in recorded history, first written down by the Greek historian Herodotus within living memory of people who claim to have heard the story from survivors' own countrymen. A force roughly the size of a modern army division, more soldiers than most ancient kingdoms could field in total, walked into the Egyptian desert and ceased to exist. Not a single survivor returned. Not a single artifact was found for 2,500 years. Historians, archaeologists, and treasure hunters have been arguing about what happened to them ever since. Whole expeditions have been funded on the strength of this one story. Egyptian officials have chased rumors of buried armor across the western desert for more than a century, and at least one modern discovery claiming to be the army's remains has made international headlines before being challenged by other archaeologists. The mystery has outlasted every empire involved in causing it. Cambyses II, son of Cyrus the Great, was the Persian king who conquered Egypt in 525 BC after defeating Pharaoh Psamtik III at the Battle of Pelusium, an astonishing military achievement that made him master of the largest empire the world had yet seen, stretching from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River. But conquest brought complications. The oracle at Siwa, a sacred site deep in the Libyan desert, more than 500 kilometers west of the Nile, dedicated to the god Amun and already famous throughout the ancient Mediterranean for its prophecies, had refused to legitimize his rule. For Cambyses, a king trying to present himself as the rightful pharaoh in the eyes of Egypt's priesthood, an oracle that would not cooperate was a serious political problem. He decided to solve it militarily. He assembled a force of 50,000 soldiers, an army larger than the forces most contemporary powers could field in a single campaign, and sent it west from Thebes toward the Siwa oasis. The army was marching through one of the most hostile environments on Earth. The Great Sand Sea, a vast expanse of shifting dunes where summer temperatures exceed 50 degrees Celsius, and reliable water sources are separated by several days of travel on foot. The soldiers carried provisions for the march. They had experienced desert guides. Cambyses was not a reckless commander. He had just successfully invaded and subdued Egypt in a single campaigning season. The army set out. 7 days into the desert, at an oasis called El Karga, it was seen by outside witnesses for the last time. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing in Book 3 of his histories about 75 years after the event, provides the only detailed ancient account of what happened. According to his sources, Egyptians who said they had heard the story from contemporaries of the disaster, the army was destroyed by a sandstorm of catastrophic scale. A wind arose from the south, Herodotus wrote, strong and deadly, bringing with it vast columns of whirling sand, which entirely buried them, and they disappeared forever. Herodotus adds that this account came from the people of Siwa themselves, who claimed no army ever reached their oasis at all. A sandstorm large enough to bury 50,000 men and all their equipment, weapons, armor, supply wagons, pack animals, is not physically impossible in the Sahara. The region generates some of the most violent dust storms on the planet, a phenomenon known locally as the Khamsin, capable of reducing visibility to zero within minutes and piling sand meters deep across hundreds of square kilometers within hours. But for 2,500 years, it had never been confirmed by physical evidence. No bones, no weapons, no artifacts of any kind had ever been found in the desert between El Karga and Siwa, despite the fact that bronze and iron weapons buried in dry desert sand can survive for millennia without significant corrosion. In 2009, Italian archaeologists Alfredo and Angelo Castiglione announced that, After more than 2 decades of searching the region, they had finally found something. Working in a remote section of the Egyptian desert near the Siwa oasis, they uncovered human remains, bones from dozens of individuals, along with Persian-style bronze arrowheads, a horse bit, an earring, and other items consistent with a military force from the 6th century BC. The artifacts were mixed with bleached, scattered bones spread across a wide area, a pattern the archaeologists argued was consistent with a catastrophic mass death in the open desert rather than a formal battlefield or burial site. Their interpretation: this was the army of Cambyses, or at least a remnant of it, destroyed by a catastrophic sandstorm, much as Herodotus described more than 2,000 years earlier. Egyptian archaeologists, including the country's then head of antiquities, Zahi Hawass, were openly skeptical. The sample size was small relative to an army of 50,000. The exact location wasn't conclusively linked to any known march route. The dating of the artifacts was suggestive, but not definitive, and no formal excavation permit for the specific claims was ever granted. A competing theory, advanced by other scholars, holds that the army never reached the deep desert at all, that it was ambushed and destroyed far earlier in the march by Egyptian forces loyal to Petubastis III, a rival claimant to the pharaonic throne resisting Persian rule from the Dakhla oasis. This would explain why no large deposit of remains has ever been found in the deep, remote desert. The truth is that 2,500 years after the army of Cambyses disappeared, we still do not know what happened to it. The 3 leading theories, catastrophic sandstorm, ambush by Egyptian forces, or simply that the remains exist somewhere in a section of desert that has never been systematically searched, remain unresolved, and the Castiglione discovery itself has never been definitively confirmed or fully published in a peer-reviewed excavation report. What is not in dispute is the scale of the event. 50,000 soldiers, fully equipped, experienced, led by competent commanders answering to one of the most successful conquerors in the ancient world. All of them gone in the space of a single march through the desert, with no survivors and no official Persian record of the disaster ever surfacing. If the sandstorm theory is correct, the Sahara simply swallowed them whole. And somewhere under the sand, there are 50,000 skeletons, 50,000 weapons, and 50,000 sets of equipment waiting in near-perfect preservation in the bone-dry desert air, exactly as they fell. Archaeologists, satellite imaging teams, and independent treasure hunters have been searching for more than a century. The Sahara covers roughly 9 million square kilometers, an area larger than the continental United States, and the specific stretch between El Kharga and Siwa alone spans tens of thousands of square kilometers of shifting, ever-moving dunes that can bury and re-expose the same ground within a single generation. They marched into one of the most hostile environments on Earth, sent by a king to silence a god who wouldn't bow to him, and the desert answered instead. 50,000 soldiers marched into the desert. None came back. The army of Cambyses is the largest military force in recorded history to simply vanish. No survivors, no message, no confirmed physical evidence for 2,500 years. Somewhere in the Sahara, the sand may still be keeping its secret, holding an entire Persian army in the same positions its soldiers fell. Or the true answer may be buried under palace politics and rival armies in an oasis that doesn't look anything like a battlefield. Either way, no one who marched out of El Kharga in 525 BC ever came home, and Cambyses himself died within 2 years of sending them, wounded by his own sword while remounting his horse in Syria, according to Herodotus, never learning what became of the men he sent to punish an oracle. Subscribe if you want more. See you in the next one.